Aurora's Committee of Adjustment meeting. I will start by introducing the committee members and staff. I am the committee chair, and my name is Tom Plamondon. The remaining members of the committee are as follows. My vice chair is Daniel Lajeunesse, Steve D'Angeli, Linda Duringer, and David Mango. Good evening, everyone. The Secretary Treasurer is Prashanthi Manoharan, and our planner this evening is Rosanna Punit. Good evening to staff. The committee council secretary is Linda Bottas, and the manager of development planning is Anna Enriquez. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. It is also being conducted virtually through the use of Zoom technology. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our town clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including on the town's website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk. Please be advised that the reports being considered tonight are available on the Town of Aurora website and through staff at the town's planning department. Should you wish to receive notification of any of the decisions of tonight's meeting, please complete the appropriate form available through town staff. Owners and agents will automatically be notified. For each application that will be considered tonight, the following process will occur. I will briefly outline the purpose of the application or applications, and then the applicant or agent will then be given the opportunity to make a presentation. However, one is not required. It is the applicant's decision whether or not they wish to speak or let the application proceed on the merits of the information as received. Following any initial comments from the applicant, I will invite members of the public who have an interest in the application to come forward and address the committee. Those members of the public who wish to speak must clearly state their name and address and must provide this information to the Secretary Treasurer. Should you wish to obtain a copy of the decision or notice of decision, please complete the appropriate form, again available through the Secretary Treasurer. Members of the public are reminded that text comments are not permitted during the meeting and that they will not be noted in any manner or at any time. Each individual may speak only once on an issue, and once discussion has commenced, in respect of a motion, no further presentations shall be made. Please turn off the YouTube live feed when you are about to address the committee. There is about a 2-minute lag on the YouTube feed of the meeting. If you require any technical assistance with your presentation, please let me know. Please ensure that all questions and or comments are directed through me as the chair. And if relevant, I will request the appropriate person respond. It should be noted that the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to any question or comments should the committee feel that it is appropriate. So tonight's meeting will now commence, and I will look to the committee for approval of the agenda. Yes, Linda, seconded by Daniel. Thank you very much. And I'll call the question on the approval of the agenda. All in favor? Thank you, and that carries. I'll ask members of the committee if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. And seeing lots of heads shaking no, that's terrific. Next is the adoption of the minutes, and we're talking about the minutes of the August 12th, 2021 meeting, and that would be meeting number 2109. So I'll look for adoption of these minutes, please. Moved by David. Thank you very much. Seconded by Steve, and all in favor. And I'll note that, yes, Daniel was away at that meeting, and I noticed that he abstained from voting on that. All right, thank you very much. Presentation of applications for this evening. The first is minor variance MV 2021-21, Luriello, and that is at 26 Steeplechase Avenue. I believe there is a request that has been made by the applicant to defer our review of this item. So I will ask, Shantae, is that where this stands at the moment?
Through the chair, yes. The applicant has consented to a deferral of the application to a future meeting. However, since proper notice has been given, it was placed on the agenda so that a formal motion for deferral can be made.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll look to the committee then for a motion to defer this item to a future meeting. Steve, I see your hand up there, so please go right ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I move that we defer minor variance application 2021-21 Lurero, 26 Steeplechase Avenue to a future committee of adjustment session.
Thank you. Look to the committee for a seconder, please. Linda, see your hand up there. Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion to defer? Thank you very much. All right, that carries. Moving forward then on to item 2 of the applications. So this is minor variance application for 65 ETS GP Incorporated at 45 Eric T. Smith Way. I'll draw the committee's attention to 2 things. There is a related planning application being a site plan application 2020-101. And members of the committee will recall that this particular property has been before us before under minor variance 2021-19. In this application, the owner applicant is requesting relief from the requirements of the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw 6000-17 as amended to facilitate the construction of a multi-unit industrial building. The following relief is being requested. A, section 24 349.1 of section 10.1 does not permit a warehouse use as defined in zoning bylaw 6000-17 as a, in brackets, principal permitted use. The applicant is proposing warehouse as a principal use. And again, as I mentioned, we did approve MV 2021-19, and that was related to the reduction of a landscape strip on the west side of the property from 3 meters down to 1.5 meters. And moving through planning comments, general intent of the official plan, staff are of the opinion that the overall prestige image of the business park is being maintained, as the warehouse use would be located at the rear of the property, thereby meeting the general intent of the official plan. And with regards to the general intent of the zoning bylaw, the town zoning bylaw permits warehouse as an accessory use where the primary use is industrial. Therefore, staff are of the opinion that the variance meets the general intent of the zoning bylaw. With regards to the desirability of the appropriate development of the property, the proposed warehouse use as a principal use is compatible with the uses permitted in the area. No negative impacts are anticipated to result from the permitted warehouse use on the property and in the surrounding business park area. As proposed, it is considered desirable. In In regards to the variance being minor in nature, staff are of the opinion that the requested variance is considered minor. Other departments and agencies circulated. The building division preliminary zoning review was completed on August the 9th, 2021. Engineering division, no concerns on the application. Operational services, no comments on the application. Central York Fire Services, no comments received at the time of the writing of the report. York Region has no comments on the application. Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, no comments on the application. It is located outside the area governed by OREG 17906 under the Conservation Authorities Act. Electra Utilities, the comments have been received. And Ministry of Transportation, no comments. There are conditions of approval. There are two. And I'll look to the owner or applicant on this application. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee. My name is Heath Purtell-Sharp and I'm here tonight as a planner with Groundswell Urban Planners. I'm also joined this evening by Lucilla Sandoval, a senior planner with Groundswell. We are the agents here this evening on behalf of 65 ETS GP Inc., who are the owners of 45 Eric T. Smith Way. As was noted, we are requesting relief from the requirements of the town zoning bylaw to facilitate the construction of a multi-unit industrial building on the site, which is within the existing business park. The minor variance being sought is from sections 24.349.1 and section 10.1, and we are seeking to permit the warehouse use as a principal permitted use, whereas section 10.1 permits warehouse use only as an accessory use where the principal use is industrial. The warehouse use proposed would be contained entirely within the enclosed building on the site, with no outdoor storage associated with this use. And this is to maintain the high quality of the development and the prestige of the business park. Through our review and consultation with town staff, we've read the staff report and we have no concerns with its contents. We agree with planning staff's conclusions that the variance meets the 4 tests and their recommendation for approval. The staff report provided by the town and as noted has 2 conditions of approval, which we have no concerns with either. And as you are aware, the applicant has an active site plan application for the proposed development. So we will continue to work through the site plan approvals with the town on this. I'd be happy to answer any questions the chair or committee may have.
Thank you very much, Heath. And I will, for the record, ask if there are any members of the public who wish to address the committee. And I don't believe there are. Anyone here from the public this evening, Prashanti?
For the chair, we have no members of public.
Thank you very much. And I will look to members of the committee for any comments or questions to the applicant. And I don't see any questions or comments. Yeah, my only concern, Heath, was the location of the warehousing activity. And I noticed in the staff report that it's referred to as being at the rear of the building or the rear of the individual units, and no storage and no activity outside the building itself. And so that would have been my only concern. It's a very tight site with the traffic circulation, truck maneuvering and parking. So that would have been my only concern if there was any outdoor activity. So I will look, I guess, to the committee then for a motion on the application. Daniel, please go right ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I move that we approve minor variance 2021-24 as outlined and for the reasons outlined by the town through the document, but contingent on the two conditions of approval as outlined in Appendix A with no addendum.
Look for a seconder on the motion. Stephen, thank you very much. I'll call the question. All of those in favor of the motion? And that carries. Heath, thank you very much. Lucille, I
Nice
just
to
want
see
to
you, Tom.
acknowledge. Yeah, I'll just acknowledge that you are here, and nice to see you again after I don't know how many years it's been.
Many.
Many. And I hope all is going well with you at Groundswell.
You as well. Thank you at the town.
Just for those on the committee and staff, Lucille and I worked together quite a number of years ago in a private consulting firm, and just nice to see her again. All
You
right,
as well, Tom.
I'll wish you both a pleasant evening, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. Bye.
Bye now. All right, moving on to the third application for this evening. We are looking at minor variance application for 2351528 Ontario Limited at 378 Addison Hall Circle. This is minor variance application 2021-25. The applicant is requesting relief from the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw 6000-17 as amended to facilitate the development of a banquet hall facility. The following relief from the requirements of the town zoning bylaw 6000-17 as amended is requested. A, section 24.443.1 and 10.1 of the zoning bylaw does not permit a banquet hall use as defined in the zoning bylaw 6000-17 as amended. B, section 5.4 of the zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 183 parking spaces based on the proposed 1,664.15 meters square gross floor area. The applicant is providing 123 parking spaces for the proposed banquet hall. Planning comments are as follows. General intent of the official plan. Staff are of the opinion that the requested variance meets the general intent of the official plan. With regards to the zoning bylaw, while the zoning bylaw does not specifically list a banquet hall as a permitted use, and by definition, a banquet hall does not include a restaurant or conference center, it is staff's opinion that a banquet hall is similar to these other uses permitted by the bylaw. Staff are therefore of the opinion that the proposed amount of parking is sufficient to accommodate the banquet hall, and that the reduced parking variance satisfies the intent of the zoning bylaw. With regards to the appropriate development or use of the land, staff are of the opinion that the proposed amount of parking is sufficient to accommodate the banquet hall, and the related variance is therefore appropriate for the site. Matters such as site and building design, as well as parking locations and configuration, will be reviewed as part of the future site plan application. As such, staff are of the opinion that development as proposed is considered desirable for the appropriate development and use of the lot. With regards to it being considered minor in nature, staff are of the opinion that the proposed variances are minor in nature. Other comments received: engineering services have reviewed the above noted application and have no concerns with it. Building division, a preliminary zoning review was conducted. No comments provided specifically on the application at the time of writing of the report. The accessibility advisor commented, please note that the minimum number of accessible spaces, parking spaces, is 5 parking spaces for the use of persons with disabilities, which meets the requirements of the AODA Design of Public Spaces OREG 191-11, section 80.36, subparagraph 4. The minimum number of 5 accessible parking spaces is based on 123 parking spaces being proposed. Traffic analyst. Engineering and Capital Delivery Division reviewed the above noted minor variance application. A parking study revised, prepared by CGE Consulting, dated August the 20th, 2021, was submitted to the town. The study concluded that the proposed parking supply is adequate to support the future parking demand based on first principle calculation, coupled with shared parking opportunity and site-specific transportation demand management measures. We have reviewed the provided information and concur with the applicant. Based on the foregoing, we have no objections to this minor variance application. Operational Services Parks Division, no comments or objections to the proposal. Central York Fire Services have not provided comments at the time of writing the report. Legal Services, no comments or objections to the proposal. Regional Municipality of York has completed its review of the above minor variance and has no comment. Ministry of Transportation, no concerns. Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, no comments or objections to the proposal. Electric Utilities have reviewed the proposed variance application, have no objections to its approval, subject to their usual standard comments. I won't go through that. And based on that staff report, it appears that there are no conditions. So I will look to the applicant for the agent. I believe we have Tamara. I apologize for maybe pronouncing this incorrectly, but Nia Zoffy, and I'll welcome them to the meeting.
Thank you very much. I was close. It's Tamara Nyazov. Very close. It's a hard one. So this is Michelle Raviv. I'm Tamara, and together we are Miratam. Thank you so much for listening to us. We greatly appreciate this opportunity. And we wanted to just show you a quick presentation about our project and also discussing the 2 minor variances that we're applying for.
Thank you very much.
Move to the next one. The first one, as you mentioned, is the Banquet Hall minor variance. For Shantae, next, please. Thank you. So as we mentioned, the current zoning restrictions allows the use of a convention center, which is defined as a premises used for the holding of conventions, seminars, workshops, or similar activities, and may include as an accessory use dining and lodging facilities for the use by the participants. However, does not include a banquet hall or restaurant. While our intended use falls under banquet hall definition, which states essentially is a premises used for the preparation and service of food and beverages to an assembly of persons for functions including weddings and receptions, but does not include a restaurant or a convention center. And essentially, our intended use will fall for both, to cover both. We are planning to do both social events, weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, birthday parties, and also corporate and corporate events, such as Christmas parties or just corporate events, town events as well for the city of Aurora to facilitate community events and to promote community awareness in the city, and as well as conventions. So realistically, the two restrictions are very close, and essentially a banquet hall is very similar to a convention center and vice versa. Thank you, Shantae. So a little bit about our property. We are planning to erect a 10,000 square foot building, which is going to be used as our front of house. That front of house will include and house a lobby space for cocktail hour, offices, washrooms, including accessible washrooms, and a prep kitchen. The second floor of the front of house building will be 3,000 square feet and will essentially hold all our offices and perhaps bridal suites as well. And then adjacent and connected to the front of house, we will erect a 4,800 square foot glass structure, which will be the main area for dinner and dancing. And that will house all of the conventions, the corporate events, the social events, and the community functions for the town of Aurora. Shantae, thank you. And some benefits to having a banquet hall in the town of Aurora. So from what we understand, there are not too many currently in the town of Aurora. I think there's only one or two. So ours is going to be, however, ours is going to be extremely unique. One of the things that we're doing, so what's going to make our venue very special is that our glass structure, which is going to be adjacent to the front of house, is going to have a retractable roof system. The retractable roof opens fully and allows for you to essentially be able to dine and dance under the stars. This is something that is first of its kind in all of Canada. And so we are bringing it to Aurora to really, really make the city very special. So one of the benefits to our banquet hall is it will, number one, advance the economy. We will hire local people from the city of Aurora to work at the banquet hall. This will be very beneficial for both students as well, and obviously other people who are looking for employment. It will build a greener community because our glass structure, it has a retractable roof and has open sides and is made out of glass. It is much more environmentally friendly. We do not need to use as much cooling and heating because we're able to open the sides and the roof. And as well, it is very friendly for things like COVID. Because of the retractable roof once again, and because of the open sides, the venue is considered an outdoor space where there is air that is being circulated, fresh air that is being circulated versus the same air. So it's very friendly for anything like COVID or just in general. And then design excellence, both our front of house building, our glass building, and as well the landscaping on our property will be designed to the most utmost and most efficient standards and design standards. All three of us are designers, and so we will make sure that the building and the property looks very beautiful, very pleasing to the eye, and something that a lot of people will definitely want to host their events and take pictures at. And finally, conserving cultural resources. So we were saying that we really want to use our venue to be able to promote all of the multiculturalism in Aurora and as well the GTA in general, to be able to host events out at our space to promote all types of cultural backgrounds. So we're hoping to be able to do that at our event, at our space. Thank you, Shantae. Next one. And then the second minor variance, as I was mentioning, the second variance is for the parking. So as was mentioned by Tom, thank you. We are technically our entire structure is 10,000, over 10,000, well, 14,800 square feet with everything combined. Sorry, 17,800 square feet. I forgot the offices with everything combined. So technically, based on the square footage of our entire property, we are supposed to have 183 parking spaces. However, our glass building can hold a maximum of 250 people or 250 guests. And when we do social events or any kinds of events, usually it's the same amount of people that go from one space. So from the ceremony space, for example, to the cocktail space, to the reception space. We will only hold one function at our event per day or per event whenever that happens. So it will always be no more than 250 guests in the space at one time. Therefore, 183 parking spaces are not required for the total amount of guests that we can fit in the space at one time. Next slide, please. Sorry, Shantae, can you go back to the other slide? Go back to the parking slide. I forgot to mention something. Sorry, I think it was the transportation study, the next one. Yes, thank you. So one of the things at the transportation study that we discussed at the transportation study, sorry, Prashante, was the other slide that you just had. Thank you. And one of the other reasons why we don't need as many parking spots is, once again, because of the type of business that we are going to have. So we are proposing different things. First of all, events usually, especially social events, happen either on a weeknight or on a weekend. The other businesses in the business park majority of them will be functioning during the day from Monday to Friday. So there will be parking spots available from our next door neighbors, and in general around the vicinity, it will be empty when we are having our events. So in order to facilitate additional parking, we have ways to do this. One of which is to share the parking with our neighbors when they are not using it in the evenings and on the weekends. Another option as well is valet parking. This is something that is very common in social and corporate events, to hire valet parking, a company to come and valet park your car. So we need to do additional parking that way. As well, once again, with most social and corporate events, using a ride sharing program like Uber or Lyft is very common, because people do like to have a few drinks and want to be safe. And that's something that we are going to encourage as well, and make sure that we offer taxis, Ubers, and Lyfts to our guests so that they can be safe and that they don't need to drink and drive to the venue. Next slide, please, Prashante. This is just our site plan that we wanted to show where our proposed facility is, and the parking and some of the green space that we will be using to hold ceremonies and cocktail hour, and also to have pictures at. Next slide, please. And then we just did some 3D renderings just to give you a visual of what we're hoping our space to look like. This is going to be our beautiful long driveway that is going to be lined with trees, which is going to the parking lot will not be as visible, and would create a really beautiful tunnel leading into the space. Next slide, please. And then this is the bird's eye view of our space. Where you see the parking. It's going to be we have the 3-meter perimeter around the entire building as required by the town of Aurora, with all of the beautiful trees. And then our front of house structure is in the back with the glass structure, and a patio area for ceremony cocktails, and some greenery as well. And as you can see, there's going to be a ton of beautiful natural greenery from the forest that it backs into, and as well just landscaping that we are hoping to put in to really make our space very special and one of a kind. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation, Tamara. I'll again, for the record, and Prashante, you've already covered it off, but I will invite members of the public who wish to speak on this application to come forward, and seeing none, I will turn it over to members of the committee for comments, questions to the applicant. So let's start with Daniel there. Daniel, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. Okay, so I have a couple of questions, and great job with the presentation, because you actually took care of 2 out of 4 of my questions / concerns. To be perfectly frank, my banquet questions have been resolved. My parking questions are the ones that remain. And parking refers as well in terms of parking, but as well in terms of the getting to and leaving your building. And I'm going to say this as a foundation. It's not really relevant to my decision, but it's relevant in terms of painting a picture. So the Addison, sorry, what's the name of the Addison Hall Business Park Urban Design Brief states that the preference is to move buildings as close to the road as possible. To be perfectly frank, that is actually one of the things I truly believe in. It helps to remove that Walmart type of look into an area. That area, there are some exceptions because of that type of area, but you'll see why I bring that up to relate it to this, because I'm a little bit concerned about that 1/3 of parking spots missing. Yes, there are a lot less parking spots probably needed for a banquet versus a conference. Probably 1-to-1 on a conference and maybe closer 2-to-1 when it comes to a banquet, even though you do mention that conference is something that you might be interested in, small ones or different type of activities. But I'm a little bit concerned when it comes to the safety for the individuals who cannot park in your parking lot. You talk about street parking, you talk about sharing parking spaces with your neighbors. Kudos on that. Valeting and so forth. So those first 2 are the ones that make me a little bit more nervous, because if I look at your renders, both the 3D CAD one and the overview, there is no safe pedestrian path between the street and your building. I love trees. Trees should be first thing we think of, but unfortunately, you're asking your customers to walk on the street or in that path that every single one of those cars possibly has to go through, especially at the end of the day when everybody's leaving at the same time. You're really putting your overflow participants at risk, because you can't house them in your parking lot. They have to go outside, and now you're putting them in danger. And that's one of the things that when you think about why does that number have to be high in terms of the planning and the numbers that are in the documents and the requests, it's because it keeps them safe by having them all on your property and getting to your cars. But now you're forcing them down the path. And there are plenty of examples of that being ignored. I'm thinking about the McDonald's near my house, where if you want to walk to the McDonald's, you're walking on the same place that the cars are driving and down the hill. Very, very unsafe. So I don't feel safe with that. I'm seeing a lot of looking back and forth. So maybe I'll pause and let you guys, I know you probably won't have an answer for me right away, but what are your thoughts in terms of that?
So, okay, so I just, cards on the table. I did those 3D drawings myself.
Good job.
I haven't reached the actual landscaping architectural phase yet, but I imagine that there will.
Tom has a question. Yes,
Oh,
Tom.
yes, Tom.
Let me just stop you just for 1 second and just, I know, Tamara, you introduced them. Can I get your names on the record again,
Yes.
just for the record? I'm sorry.
Raviv Kunets, Kunets.
Thank you.
And this is Michelle Garber.
Thank you very much. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I did those drawings myself just to put something visual together. But once we get into the nitty-gritty of the architectural drawings, I'm sure we're going to have some paths. I'm sure there's going to be a sidewalk there as well.
There actually is a sidewalk there anyways.
Yeah,
Well,
oh, there
Addison
is.
Hall,
Addison Hall has a
its own
sidewalk, has its own sidewalk. You just don't see that
But
in the
he's talking
drawing.
about into the
But
building.
into, yeah,
Yes,
so we
yes.
will definitely have.
We will definitely have, that was a very good point, Daniel. And we will definitely have on the driveway, a sidewalk as well with the adjacent to the driveway on either side, so that guests will be safe and there'll be plenty of lighting. We're hoping to line the driveway with both the beautiful trees and beautiful tall lights, so that there will be plenty of lighting, so that it will be safe for guests to get to their cars if they need to go somewhere else.
But also, there will be most likely some sort of, at least one on either side, probably a pedestrian walkway there'll be a gap in the trees, where there'll be an actual pedestrian walkway that they can go into the parking lot from. And I mean, we don't know what the neighbors are doing yet, but if it's an option, we would also do one to the left.
I also want to mention too, with events and banquet halls, there's always a security guard stationed right at the door. So that way, for safety, if you're worried about people drinking, they will never, ever let someone out that they think has drunk too much, where they can't walk if they're stumbling. We will always have a security guard, which is part of the banquet hall. We have to. They're going to be right at the door, so they know exactly who's coming out.
And also,
one
more thing I wanted to mention that I forgot during my presentation is something to keep in mind in regards to parking, that when you do social events specifically, most people come in couples or families. So even though we can hold 250 guests, chances are that we would only have a maximum of 125 cars, a max, and we can already fit 129. And that doesn't include people who are families, so more than two people in a car, and also doesn't include young people who will most likely take a Lyft or Uber because they're going to want to drink. Sorry.
Okay. So to bring, that's, and the extra information was warranted and appreciated. So if I was to recap on that matter, even though if I'm looking at the overview drawing, the one that has the measurements, unfortunately, they're at a resolution that I can't tell, but that's fine. So there is an ability to have a consideration or a requirement for a sidewalk in order to get to your I'll call it overflow parking, whether it's neighbors or street or whatever, overflow parking, get those individuals there. Get them to the proposed facility in a safe way manner. I won't be thinking about the drunk people. They're on their own. But I'm thinking about a husband and wife or two friends walking together to get from the street to your facility. They can do so in a safe way because there's not enough parking in your parking lot. And I want to bring it back to that. Why I'm repeating that is because you're not hosting them on your property in, let's say, the 10% of the time where, basing on your numbers, let's say 10% of the time you won't be able to house everybody on your property. You're going to go overflow. I'm just pulling that number. It's not a real number, but just for sake of conversation, those individuals can be safe to get to your building when they need to do so. Okay, perfect. So, and this doesn't really affect parking or a banquet, but is it your intention? I'll bring it back to sorry, I have too many monitors. To bring it back to the Addison Hall Business Park Urban Brief, where they request to bring it to the front. But I do see back to your impressive early CAD capabilities. There is the intent of breaking the car view. You don't have the intention of making it I'll pick on Walmart. There's no intention of making this a Walmart type of function of look. This is meant to have green, and then you're inside and the whole experience is within that environment. Okay.
Our intention is for people to as soon as they pull up into the driveway, for them to be in a different world. And
okay, so I'll take a step back on that though. What I'm also thinking of is the people who are driving by. So obviously you got to think, come in beautiful. You're going somewhere. but I'm also thinking of the ones who are unfortunately going to work and they're driving by your building.
Daniel, if you saw, we did have that 3-meter perimeter all around the building with the really tall trees. And that's the
Perfect.
idea, to be able to hide that 100%, because we want our building to be, and our space to be like you're entering, you know, a wonderland, like a beautiful forest wonderland, for sure.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I appreciate your time and your details. So thank you. So Tom, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, moving over to David Mango. Go ahead, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and through the Chair. I have some questions and also maybe some proposals. I'll follow up on what Daniel was asking. Of course, I was also worried about the, I know your plan doesn't show sidewalks, it doesn't show any pedestrian walkways. And so the question is, you have sort of done a little bit of promising. Yes, we are planning, we'll be doing that. Yes, we'll be doing this. Now, just to make sure that really you'll be doing what you think you'll be doing. And the fact that you don't have a site plan application at the moment, you've not submitted anything, there's no detailed review or technical review by staff. And based on the past experience, what I was going to do is, and maybe even you have asked the staff, was to propose conditions, because there are no conditions, the proposed condition that which would say that the applicant, let's say, if let's say this application is approved, that the applicant will work with the town staff to provide sidewalks, pedestrian walkway, so that there's access to the this site. So I would propose that to be a condition. It's just something which I will make sure that you discuss with the town and is going to be implemented. I know you've mentioned it, is that you're going to do it. Don't expect to be a problem for you if you are really saying what you're saying here is that what you're going to do. But it gives comfort and security to staff that you have a positive discussion at that time when you have a site plan application, and you're going to work with town cooperatively, and you're going to provide the sidewalks or whatever access is required at that particular time. So that's my first thing, which I would propose to other members that maybe would put that condition. The other one is the you mentioned about the shared parking with the neighbors. My question would be, have you spoken to any of the neighbors about shared parking and so on? So are you able to answer that question? Have you spoken or discussed with any of the neighbors about shared parking?
So no, we have not. We have no idea who the neighbors are.
Yes.
The owner of the land of the business park is not releasing any of that information until the entire park is sold. I guess they just don't want interference with any of the purchases and sales that are going on or any of the agreements. So they're keeping all of that anonymous details. But I imagine, again, based on the fact that our hours are generally after hours, our events, and on weekends when they're typically closed, it shouldn't be an issue, as there's a lot of precedent with other venues that do that. And so it's typically a non-issue, but we don't have anything in writing at the moment that would confirm that.
Yeah, okay. So just following on that, I would also something which would be one condition which will be speaking about providing sidewalk or pedestrian walkway, or having the opportunity to talk to the other neighbors. Of course, they may say no, but just putting that encouraging you to speak with your other, the neighbors that, the possibility of shared parking. And you mentioned about the traffic demand management in terms of bicycle parking or public transit usage. Again, that ties in having a sidewalk. So basically, the town maybe with you, it will be something like sidewalk within your frontage, within your property. But maybe also the wording of being a possibility. If they say the town who owns Addison Circle, that they will have right of way, such that you could even discuss with the town at that time to have, possibility of sidewalk. Could be only on your side or could be both sides of that street. So what I'm trying to say here in general is putting a condition that you'll be working on the town to make this possible, that you have, street sidewalks or the, pedestrian, walkway, which will be actually required, okay? And the one other thing which I wanted to mention, which is also mentioned in the staff's report, is about the consideration of the Addison Hall Business Park Urban Design Guidelines, whereby they are talking about having the buildings in front instead of being in the rear. Is something which the town in the report says that they will be, working with you, with the applicant, to look at the site plan stage, to look at the relocation of the parking configuration towards the side or rear of the building. Mm-hmm. Any comment, or have you done any preliminary design or sketch to think this is feasible or not? Because we can put it here that yes, you're going to be discussing with the town, but if you have done some calculations, some preliminary design, you think this may not be feasible, may have problems in terms of design or location of the building, and they need to affect the parking and so on, then it will be an issue. And there's another comment here about it also, that if let's say you relocate or you rearrange the buildings and the parking location, it may trigger some variances. So again, considering this, I would suggest to have, if this is approved, I would suggest to have a condition, could be one encompassing condition, which we will talk about discussing with the town, have sidewalks, pedestrian walkway, agreeing that you're going to be discussing with them regarding the parking configuration, and also that there may be variances, because we don't know, you don't want later on to say, oh, we're not aware about these variances and so on. So I would wish to have that condition, or could be separate conditions, but something to the effect that the applicant agrees that it will actually work with the town staff at the site plan stage, look at the location of the parking configuration towards the sides of the year, and also consider, installing or constructing sidewalks or pedestrian walkways as required. I would say as required, because we don't want to put it just open, as required. Mm-hmm. Would okay with you?
Yeah, I mean, the sidewalk issue is really not an issue for us. We're happy to work with the town and city on whatever is, whatever's required in the safest way possible. So we're happy to definitely comply with all of those. The relocation of the buildings, we haven't explored any of that yet. Like I said, that drawing and that site plan was just an initial sort of configuration that we came up with without knowing what the parking in the front or back, that rule, the urban design rule. However, we are going to try, but we also feel that the back and the side of the buildings are where the most beauty lies, and where we want to have the guests really experience the events is, overlooking the beautiful tree lines that the city of Aurora has over the hill. And that's one of the reasons why this lot was so attracted to us. If we move the building to the front, that might hinder some of that, and it might cause the view to not be so great for our guests. So we'll definitely work with it. And like you said, it might trigger a difference in parking spaces by doing that too. So we may have to come back to another minor variance in parking. So we're definitely going to attempt to try to do something with that. But ideally, we'd like to see if we can get the city to agree that if we beautify the parking area with the beautiful tall hedges, and we make it not really a visible thing, that we could have the buildings in essence where, or roughly where they are at the moment.
Okay, so maybe if we, let's say we have approval, the condition based on what you have just said, which is good, is instead of using the word relocation, is to say looking into the parking area as well as the parking configuration. Just put the word like parking configuration with the town, not really putting the words relocating, because as you have explained, based on how you beautify the area, you do a good design, architectural design, maybe the need of relocating may not be an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say maybe just discussing, maybe if the condition could be just looking at parking configuration with the town. Basically, be able to sit with the town to discuss parking configuration, discuss the possibility of sidewalks or walkways, things like those.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. 100%.
My other last question is on one of the slides, there's a table about parking. You mentioned 129 parking spaces, but in the report, in staff's report, we're talking that you're providing 123 parking spaces.
Plus the 6
Accessible spaces.
accessible spaces.
Oh, okay. Okay, understand. Okay, let me see if you have any other question here. Yeah, I think that's it. Those are my questions and my proposal for a condition if this application gets approved.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Perhaps, David, just listening to your comments there, perhaps the conditions that you're talking about would probably be prefaced by the word recommendations.
Yeah,
So
okay, yeah.
That the committee recommend,
Yeah.
that the applicant work with the town on the issues around building location, parking location, and in compliance as much as possible with the urban design guidelines. Something along those lines. I'll leave it to you to think about that. And
I agree. I think I agree. Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Just throwing that as a suggestion. Let me move on to other members of the committee, and hopefully by the time we get through them, I won't have any questions for you. So moving forward here, let me ask if Stephen, have you got any comments or questions you want to bring forward?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, and I've got it up here on my computer, but for Shantae, maybe if you could bring up, I think it's slide 5 that has the concept site plan. Sorry, slide 5 of the minor variance the staff report is what I was looking at, to be precise. Sorry, I threw a bit of a curveball here.
Yes.
Did you want me to bring up this stuff?
Yeah, I just have a question because I'm looking at this site plan. Yeah.
The presentation one, Shantae, had it sort of elongated.
Yeah, it's page 5 of the staff report.
Yeah.
But I guess I can, while you're looking for that, I can sort of explain why I'm bringing it up. If I understand here correctly, and I've got a question to staff to confirm my understanding. So the application here is for just under 18,000 square feet. And if I understand the bylaw correctly, the requirement here for 183 parking spaces is based on a gross floor area That's 1,664.15 meters squared, which I believe is just under 18,000 square feet. Through you, Mr. Chair, is that a question to staff? Is that the correct interpretation of the bylaw?
Yeah, that should be directed to staff. Yep.
Yep.
So, Rosanna, do you have that information at hand?
It's there on the staff report. I think section 5.4 of the zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 183 parking spaces based on the proposed 1,664.15 square meters gross floor area. Right. The applicant is providing 123. And I think if I read through the report through you, Mr. Chair, I understand that 183 is based on the entire, we'll call it front of house, banquet area at the back, and the entire square footage of the combined square footage. So through you, Mr. Chair, would that be a correct interpretation?
Through the chair, yes, Steve, that is correct.
Thanks, Rosanna. So that brings me to my question, and thank you, Shantae, for bringing up the site plan. If we can look at that site plan that you showed. So to the applicant, so if I'm looking at this proposed concept plan correctly, so that part that says proposed facility with the hashed line above it, that's the front of house that you referred to, that I believe you said would have sort of cocktail parties and then office space above and potentially the staging areas for the wedding. Was that my understanding?
Yeah, so not cocktail parties, it's just a lobby space
Right.
where cocktail hour is held prior to going into dinner. But yes, and then bathrooms as well would be there.
And kitchen.
And kitchen.
Fair enough. And that those combined two floors are roughly 12,000 square feet, correct? Is what I understood?
13,
roughly,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. And so then we move to the back of the house, which is that glassed area, which is essentially what you're proposing for the banquet facility, right? The seating, the dancing, the wonderful design in terms of the open roof.
Correct.
So when I look at, and first of all, I just want to confirm what I believe is a discrepancy in the staff report. I saw your, you made reference today to maximum of 250 guests, and the staff report refers to a maximum occupancy of 250 people. But when I looked at your submission, you mentioned that there will never be more than 270 people, and I'm assuming that that delta of 20 is staff. I'm assuming. Would that be fair?
Yeah, staff.
Staff
yes.
or people that are coming into the space to, like, photographers, videographers,
Vendors, yeah.
Waiters, those kind of people. So
Right.
it's a guesstimate, but it's
It'll never
roughly
be more than that.
but it's roughly around that number.
Right.
Some
And
or
so,
less,
so
but-
yeah, fair enough. And I guess here's my concern, and I'm going to go down sort of along the same lines as my colleague David there. This is a concept plan, and the bylaw requires a certain amount of parking spaces based on a total gross floor area. And I'm going to have a question to staff here in a second. But I don't believe there's any way, or perhaps we can put a condition on this. These concept plans can change, right? And your maximum occupancy of 275 is based on, having people front of house moving to back of house. And I guess the question to staff is, if we were to prove this reduced parking spaces, could the final proposal, because we're talking about essentially seating and occupancy based on that 4,800 square feet at the back of house. I'm assuming there's no way for us as Committee of Adjustment to know that this is going to be the final design, and that it isn't. And I'm not questioning you as the applicant, but we need to ensure that if we approve this, and it looks like the staff report is, based on the assumption that we're going to have a maximum occupancy of 270. But if we change and we approve a change, and obviously this is also a convention center, potentially, if we approve 129 parking spots for 18,000 square feet of gross floor area, and then the concept plan changes to not have a 4,800 square foot back of house and banquet facility, and it has, let's say, 6,000 or 8,000 in the final concept plan that's submitted and the site plan review, we have the potential to have approved under a set of assumptions that are no longer reflected in the final numbers here, and we might have a parking deficiency there. So I'll pause there and I'll ask staff, is that an accurate concern? Like, is the staff report seems to be assuming that this site plan and the figures supported and the maximum occupancy of 250 is going to be the final, but there is the potential, correct me if I'm wrong, that the final site plan could actually have a maximum occupancy in the banquet facility that is well in excess of 250 people. And through you, Mr. Chair, if I could just ask staff to comment on that in terms of procedurally, how this would work.
Through the chair, looking at the variance being requested, so the way the zoning review will happen is that they will look at the site plan and make sure that the proposed, so the area that they have is 1664.15 meters squared GFA. That's the max area where it would allow the 123 parking spaces. If they go above this, a variance is triggered. If they go below this, let's say they make a smaller building,
Right.
Obviously less parking, but that 123 is capped at that specific area.
Right, and sorry, just to clarify my question, it looks like the staff report is through you, Mr. Chair, is and the traffic study is based on a banquet facility that has a maximum seating capacity of 250, and if we even take 270 with staff, that's assuming that out of 18,000 square feet, only 4,800 are used at any time for seating and dancing. Is there anything to stop the applicant from coming back at a later date with a revised concept plan that has, for example, a banquet facility of 12,000 square feet, and that would not trigger another variance request, correct? If we approve this.
So approve this, and then another application comes in for another variance?
Well, no,
Additional
my
space?
question is here, the site plan here is a gross floor area of 1,600 and change,
Yeah.
which equates 18,000 square feet.
Okay.
But the applicants are saying that right now the plan that we're being asked to approve at 129 parking spots and a deficiency of 60 is based on this site plan, which has really a banquet facility at the back that's only 4,800 square feet out of a total 18,000. So there's 12,000 square feet that right now is being proposed as an area to host cocktail hour and a second floor for.
So if they moved through you, Mr. Chair, if I guess where that hatched line is, if they decide to, alter that line, yes, and they put more area to the cocktail hour, the parking is based, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's also based on that banquet facility parking rate. So if this application is approved, it is based on the 1664. If they alter that line, make a bigger banquet area or a bigger cocktail, the parking that is approved tonight will only be for 123 spaces for 1664. If anything changes beyond this, I understand where the committee is coming from because we don't have conditions associated with this application.
That's right.
So I understand where you're coming from. Through the site plan process, obviously, and as mentioned in the staff report, this could trigger additional variances as they don't have all the details. We're just looking at a concept, they're feeling the water to see if this will work.
Right.
Sorry,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so just to clarify my understanding, 1,664.15 square meters, which I believe equates to just under 18,000 square feet, is the entire rectangle, correct? Not including both, all the area, like not including the hash marks. It's everything that says proposed facility and glassed area, correct? That's the entire area that this 129, or sorry, the 183 is based on, correct? And we are saying that we will approve 123 spots for that entire rectangle. And the applicants are saying that right now the plan is to really divide it into two areas, and there will be the same people in both areas. And really the 123 will only be needed for 4,800 out of the 18,000. But if they come back at a later date and say 14,000 is going to be that glassed in area, that won't trigger a variance because we've approved 123 for the entire spot, for the entire
129.
129, sorry,
Yeah.
123 plus the 6, 129,
Right.
correct. So I guess here's my concern, and I to the applicants, I don't mean to sound as if I don't believe that these are your intentions. In fact, I do. I am just concerned that things change as building and conceptual plans change over time. And in order for me to approve this application, I would need some sort of a condition that this concept plan reflects the reality and that we don't have a material change to the amount of area that's being used for the banquet hall, which will end up resulting in a deficient amount of parking spots. So I'll sort of, I don't know, I'm sort of thinking, and the challenge I have here is I don't believe we can put a contingency on or a condition on a site plan that we know can change through the process. So that's my concern. And maybe I'll leave it to my colleagues to think about how we would do that or maybe I can ask a question to staff through you, Mr. Chair. Staff, is there any way that we can put a condition on this that I don't know, because we're approving it based on 18,000 square feet. I don't
Stephen,
know.
can I just jump?
Yeah.
Can I jump in just for a second, and maybe this will sort of get the rest of the committee thinking about it. When we look at this application, the zoning regulations are based on parking based on GFA. However, in this particular case, with the absence of detail, if we're looking at the rationale for reduction of parking, the report submitted on behalf of the applicant by their experts bases it on a capacity of 250. So I would suggest to you that because of that and the absence of detail, if we wanted to condition this based on capacity, which is tied to their own report, that we can certainly do that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's my concern, because I think you've articulated a lot better than me. The experts doing the traffic study and the parking study have taken at face value, have essentially done a traffic assessment based on a 4,800 square foot banking facility, or a banking facility with a capacity of 250 or 270. A gross floor area of 18,000, which the bylaw is based on, I would submit has a potential building capacity far in excess of 250 or 270. So the underlying premise of the traffic report to me seems to be, once again, taking this site plan at face value and assuming it will be the final one, and therefore is deficient. I think what would need to have been done is to demonstrate how a banquet facility of 18,000 or 1600 meters would be accommodated by 129 parking spots in this environment. So for that reason, I am prepared to accept this application with the condition that maximum capacity does not exceed 270 persons, as outlined in the staff report, because that's an assumption in the staff report as well. Actually, the staff report says 250. So everybody seems to be taking this concept drawing as a final approved plan, which it is not.
Correct. Stephen, I'll just again, let me draw us to the revised report that was submitted. They talk about first principles calculations.
Mhm.
And so in section 2.2.1 of their own report, second paragraph, I'll just read it. Parking demand at banquet halls are a function of guest demand. As noted earlier, the proposed development consists of a total GFA of 1,647 square meters or 17,228.16 square feet. And we'll have a maximum capacity of 250 people. They further go on and say typically parties will rent a venue with a capacity near the size of their event. So if I have a proposed banquet that I know, or a conference that I know are going to be, 300 people, chances are this particular site will be eliminated from any discussions because it has a capacity limit of 250 people.
Correct.
Okay, so
if we wanted to, as a condition of approval, tie it specifically to a capacity of 250 people, we can do that, regardless of what happens to the interior space. In other words, if the kitchen shrunk, if the lobby area was redesigned in order to create a little bit more floor area, fine. But the capacity would be limited accordingly.
Thank you, and thank you. That's very helpful, Mr. Chair. And one final question to staff: at what point does the maximum capacity of a building? At what point is the maximum capacity determined?
Through the chair, I would say that's through building code, right? There's a maximum capacity for building code, and I don't know that number.
So this is so here's my question through you, Mr. Chair. Following your train of thought, if we approve a variance based on a maximum capacity, and I'll even say 270, because I do see the discrepancy. I see the staff report and the traffic study or the parking study reference 250. The applicants with staffing are referencing around 270. If we were to tie it to 270 and a building comes in, that request that comes in for a building or that results in a maximum capacity in excess of 270, would that trigger another minor variance based on our approval? Our condition?
Oh, I'll tell you why it wouldn't. Because here, and again, Rosanna, you can just jump in, but having spent my life in this industry, I can tell you that once final drawings are prepared and we go through that process, there are actually a number of capacities that are generated by the building department. For example, space with fixed seats, in other words, an auditorium, would have a capacity, and it's based on so many fixed seats for so many square feet. Open space, for example, tables with non-fixed seats, in other words, a wedding environment. That would have a capacity because you've got tables, you've got space around the table, you've got the seating areas. That would generate another capacity for exactly the same space. Space with non-fixed seats, auditorium style. So it's an auditorium style, but they're just chairs put out. That would generate another capacity. If we, however, looking at the parking situation, want to tag it to 250 or 270, whichever the committee is comfortable looking at. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't have some consideration for the fact that you're going to have kitchen staff, you're going to have a security guard, as the applicants have mentioned, you're going to have people checking coats potentially, you're going to have valets running around, you're going to have wait staff running around. My guess is 20 is actually probably way light for a capacity of 250 people. But I think if we keep in our minds that what they're looking for is a capacity of patrons and guests of 250, okay, you're going to have to sort of, depending on the event, you could have as few as 10 staff. But on other events, you may have 30 or more. So, in principle, and this would be the only way I could support this application, is if we do tie it to a capacity, because the building code will go through it and they'll have a card that these people will post in their property limiting the capacity or generating a capacity. And you could have a town capacity. Our capacity then would be 250 and would be noted as the town's capacity.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, I think you actually raise a valid point. I think my position would be it would have to be tagged at 250 because that is what the staff report and that is what the underlying parking analysis. So not just guests, but guests and workers who are also going to need to arrive at the facility and potentially park. So I think an overall capacity, at least what is supported by the parking study, would need to be 250, including staff and guests. So if I could, through you, Mr. Chair, maybe going to the applicants and saying, first of all, do you have any comments with respect, and should a condition like this be attached to this minor variance application? Would you be comfortable with that?
Or you're asking us?
Yes.
Yeah, just in terms of comments on what you've heard, and should we go down that route to approve with this condition of a 250 capacity, which is what essentially the information that is before us, that's the assumption, and that's what the underlying staff and parking study is saying supports 129. Now it may be 300. So the reason I'm asking you is because if you can conceivably see a situation where you would have more people in this building, you may want, that would in essence trigger another minor variance for you. So if you can conceivably see that, you may want to do another traffic study to see if that, or parking study, apologies, that would support that larger amount. And we could, one option would be for you to do that and figure out what your maximum capacity is to give you, essentially to give you that leeway. Or if you're comfortable that 250 meets your needs and you're comfortable with that condition, then at least myself, I can't speak for my colleagues, I would be comfortable going forward and supporting this application at this time. I just want to throw it to you because my concern, and once again, it's not that I don't believe you, but we can't leave the door open for potentially 600 people there and sort of mayhem in terms of a parking lot, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the site plan concept, you're absolutely right. It hasn't been fine tuned to the last square foot, and that's very true. The property doesn't really allow us to go any bigger just because of the size of the lot, regardless. So we don't foresee that happening. Also, the glass building is also a very expensive proposition. And originally, when we started off with this project, it was actually a 44,000 square foot facility. But then we realized that, we could probably add another 800 square foot at a minimal, relatively minimal cost, to up that number a little bit to give us a little bit more guest count. But we don't foresee it changing or deviating too much from that. If anything, the proposed facility area of the kitchen and lobby area might actually shrink slightly, to accommodate a bigger loading area, to accommodate certain things that the site application might require through that phase. So, but the idea is that, yes, we will have a maximum number of guests allowed in the building. Tom, you're absolutely right with the staffing. It could vary depending on the type of event that it is. And so, we'd like to be able to have some leeway on that, where we're not dead set on a number, but, maybe we could come up with a number that's fair for the city, that we say, okay, this is what we're proposing. This is sort of the average for every event, but, for over 5 people or whatever, that we're okay, to a certain degree, I would say. I'm not sure how this works. First time doing this, but I would imagine that, within reason, there perhaps needs to be.
And through you, Mr. Chair, that's my question to you, because if you would like that buffer, like your parking study supports 250.
Yeah.
The staff report makes the assumption it'll be 250. And that's why I'm asking you, because you have a few options here. If you're comfortable with 250 as a number, and that's why I asked, then at least myself, I would be comfortable supporting this application with that condition on it. And now, the reason I'm asking you is, if you feel that you would like a buffer, you're certainly within your right to request a deferral. Go back, consult with your parking specialist, and see if 129 spots and the associated shared parking supports 300, right? And then we could put a condition, and then we would need that evidence, and at least myself, and then I'd be comfortable. But the way it stands right now, the condition that I would suggest putting on this is that it's tied to a maximum total occupancy of 250 people per event, right? And so that's where I say, that's just what the data supports. It could be more if there were more data, more tests, but that's what I'd be prepared to support tonight based on what I'm seeing, and the condition that I would suggest going forward as a condition of approval from myself. I can't speak for my my colleagues here.
Well, okay. Let me just, I see, Roseanne, I think there was something that you wanted to get in very quickly here, so please go ahead.
I didn't want to intrude. So through the chair, I want to make sure the committee understands that by imposing conditions, we have to make sure they're enforceable. So for example, the 250, making sure there is a cap on occupancy. We are not going in and checking like this type of cap. So I want to make it clear that we need to put in conditions that are enforceable. With that being said, I just want to note that banquet hall, like, the parking calculation is 11 spaces per 100 meters squared of GFA. So it's always based on the GFA. So if they decide to make a bigger building, they're coming back for a variance. If they decide to go smaller, they must have, well, in accordance with the parking, at least 123 parking spaces. But if they go smaller, they're going to get less and less parking.
Right.
So I just want to make that clear.
No,
so just let me just chime right in here, Steve, if I may, just for clarity's sake. And the comment that Rosanna is making is a very valid one, in that it has to be enforceable. And typically what happens, and I'm going to make a big assumption here and look at the applicants and suggest that, they're not unfamiliar with a banquet hall facility, and they're not unfamiliar with how they work. And I'm sure they are familiar when a occupancy is determined. It's actually publicly displayed. And typically, from my experience, it is not uncommon that a fire marshal or a member of the fire department can routinely, or the police can routinely inspect and do head counts in these types of facilities. They're done all the time. Typically what would happen, they could be random, or if in the community at large, they notice, my goodness, where did those 1,000 cars come from? Why were they parked in every single vacant building's parking spot? And there's a call made. And I'm familiar enough with this type of use based on my previous experience as a planning director and what have you. It is not a very pleasant experience for someone who goes over their capacity. They can face huge fines. They can face temporary closure. They can face permanent closure for repeated offenses. So I can tell you that maybe from an urban planning town of Aurora perspective, putting that kind of condition in might be something that would be, in the town's estimation, difficult to enforce. But from a practical experience position, I can tell you it's quite easy to enforce. So if there's any concern from the committee's perspective on that, rest assured that in practical terms, it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
And I'll just, I see heads shaking from the applicant. Let me just put it on the floor for the members of the committee. So I'm assuming from the heads that I saw shaking there, particularly Tamara and others there. Am I wrong in that assumption?
No. Oh, no, I was nodding with you. I was agreeing with you. Yes, you are 100% correct.
Yeah, and that's what
Sorry, Tom. I also wanted to say, so Tamara and I are wedding planners. And we're at banquet halls all the time. And we have had many times enforcement officers come and check. So that's why we are so, yes, Tom, you're right. Because we know personally, firsthand, that happens often. So we know we definitely don't want to have that issue. So.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. Now, let me just, coming back to Steve's question, because it's a relevant one. Mm-hmm. We understand that what you're trying to do at this point is get, two things ironed out. One is the use issue, and the second is the parking issue. And I think Daniel actually and David have also raised some planning issues that I would agree with in terms of the siting of the building. But to get to the fundamental here, particularly on the parking, are you happy or are you okay if we do put in, if it is approved, a cap of 250 people?
So my only issue with that is, what if we do have, let's say, an event where we can accommodate more people, like cocktail style, but then they get valet parking. And so then it doesn't matter how many parking spots we have, because a valet company is going to come whose job it is to, to find parking, or a shuttle bus is brought in from a hotel or from a space, and then there's no parking needed as well, or not as much parking needed as well.
So again, I have a problem with that. If the building code comes back and says cocktails, you could bump your capacity up to 500, right? Mm-hmm. We have no way at this committee at this point in time to put in a condition that would allow you to do that is enforceable. It's not enforceable. That is not enforceable. Mm-hmm. We can only deal with the building itself, the capacity, and the parking that capacity generates. That's all your parking study did for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So to Steve's point, if you think that that type of an event might occur, and you want to pursue that, pick, I got to be careful how I phrase this, pick a political candidate today who wants to have a reception at your facility with just random chairs. And in 4,800 feet, the National Building Code says, yep, you can put in 500.
18,000 feet.
Yeah. It's something that we and the town have to be comfortable with. And if that's something that you want to pursue a little bit further, then I would strongly recommend that you request a deferral and bring it back to the committee, having looked at that potential scenario. At the same time, I would strongly suggest that if you're going to do that, sit down with staff and look at the urban design guidelines and look at the potential for a redesign of where the building is situated. I'm not going to speak for the other colleagues at the table right now, other than myself. I think you've got a good idea. I'd certainly be prepared to support the banquet facility. I would only be prepared to support it at 250 people right now, total capacity.
Of guests?
No, total.
Oh, total. So including vendors.
Capacity.
Including everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And on that basis, and I'll let David come back in, and I'll let actually all members of the committee come back in. And I haven't even got to Linda yet, and I apologize, Linda. I'm kind of jumping in here. But what I'm trying to cap here is, or underline for the applicant, that we do have some concerns, and if you are going to do a deferral, based on what you're hearing today, I think you've got some feedback, and there's going to be more coming, but some feedback that would suggest to you that you might want to look at a little bit more detail on the inside of the building when you bring it back, just so that you can demonstrate a little bit better how the building works. Because in your presentation, you did a great job, really great job. I understand your enthusiasm for the glass structure, totally unique. I take my hat off to you in trying to pursue that, because that's no small feat. And I know that you're in an area of the town where it is very important that the quality of the building and the environment around it is of a very high quality. And everything that you've said so far, I believe, and it leads me to appreciate that is where your heads are at. So, my suggestion, that's my suggestion, and I'm going to park it right there, let you think about that a bit. Stephen, were you okay at that point?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I just like to echo your comments, and I'm done. I do support the idea. I do support the change of use, and I do support the concept. I applaud your design, and you've thought it through. I'm very supportive of this application. I think we just need to figure out the technical details. And just to reiterate, what you have submitted before us shows that you can handle 250 guests. If you believe that there is a situation where you need more and you don't want to be offside of capacity, you may want to hit the pause button for a little bit, think that through, and then come back with other evidence that would support another position if you feel that's necessary. So that's.
I have a clarification question regarding that. Yeah. Let's say today, if we say we're okay with the 250 person cap and you approve both of our application, because our next step is to go to an architect to start working on the plans in more detail, including the inside. And then we realize that based on the configuration and how we're doing, we are going to need more parking because we want to be able to accommodate more people. Can we then reapply for another minor variance at that point? And is that, or does that not make sense? Is it better for us to defer? Because we're to be honest, holding off on starting with this part because we want to make sure that the minor variance got approved, because if it doesn't, there's no point. We're not going to spend the money and the time working with an architect.
So if I may just throw that over to staff, because I believe the only that is feasible, it's just a question of cost, another minor variance application. But perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, we could ask staff to confirm if that's a possible.
Can you respond to that?
Yeah, so we're just confirming whether or not once they go in all their details with respect to architectural drawings, with the caveat with that condition of 250, and they figure out they need 300, I'm just using an arbitrary number, that's a good question, because minor variance is based on the zoning bylaw, and you get a minor variance to the zoning bylaw. You don't get a minor variance to the condition. So they would have to reapply, brand new application. This application would be null and void.
Now, let me just complicate that a little bit further.
Okay.
So, there's one small chunk that we're leaving out of this. Because a lot of what you are basing this on is your ability to get off-site parking. We can't approve a minor variance for you to use parking on someone else's property as part of your application. Okay? And however, if the owner, let me just go here for myself for 1 second, because I was going to reference this later on, but I might as well do it now. Okay. Gosh, we must have been here for a while because my computer has gone to sleep. Oh, here we go. So in the parking study that you've shown, there is a graphic. Prashanthi, do you have access to the parking study?
Yes, I do. It'll take me a couple minutes to bring it over, but
we also have our Casey, who did the parking study for us. She's actually on the line, so you can ask her directly if there's any questions or clarification.
Okay, thank you for that. Didn't know she was here. You know what, we'll come back to it then. And Prashanthi, I'll tell you, if you can go to, when you do get it, if you can go to page, it's the graphic showing all of the block plan and all of the properties around the site, and it shows the availability of properties. I'm just scrolling down to it now, and pull that up. Where is it?
I think you're looking for page 11.
Yeah, I must have skipped right over it. Yes, it's page 11. Thank you, Linda. So we'll come back to it. And David, I noted that you had your hand up there. And yeah, and I'll come right to you after Linda. Oh, okay. Well, while it's up, let me jump in. Sorry about that. So your block 26, which is 2.1 acres, it's showing there as unavailable. Have I got the right block?
Yes, correct.
Okay. It shows that block 18, 17, 19, and 25. Those are the ones immediately around the site within the Addison Hall Circle. They're showing them as unavailable, which means that the owner of the property has either signed or has potential contracts with people around you. So if you were in your exercise on a deferral to come back and say, and to Steve's point, here's evidence, for example, that we will have available to us on title for 20 spaces on block 18 during off-peak periods, 20 more spaces on block 17 off-peak periods. If you know where I'm getting to here, these are blocks immediately adjacent to your site that would be very easy for you to organize valet. You could come back to the committee and say, here's what the owner, the current owner, is prepared to put on title. In other words, binding any future owner or themselves under those conditions that would allow your capacity to increase. And I'm not sure if the rest of the committee would go for something like that, but it would be something that would help your case. Okay. And also, while we're on that slide, you'll notice, because the parking study does point out adjacent parking on, for example, retail, which in the evenings, well, in the evenings, it can be pretty busy too. So the retail would be the yellow block, but to the north of that, you've got two blocks, block 1 and block 27, which currently have office designations on them. Unfortunately, and I haven't really looked at that aspect of it, you've got a wetland area that runs between your property, or where you would be, and those two office blocks. I don't know if it's possible to put a pathway there. Directly
through you, the chair, I believe there's two different blues. I think you're looking at retail blue, not office blue. For block 1 and block 27, I do believe, unless my eyes are failing, that's a baby blue.
You're right.
If I can interject, if you don't mind for 1 second. So we actually, block 26, 25, 24, and 23 are all on a hill, and they overlook the blocks 28, 27, and 1. So there really would be no access because we're a much higher elevation than those ones.
Well, and you've also got Monarch Park Gate going through there as well.
Yes, there is.
So
again, that's down the hill. So
again, the opportunity to tie into something like that, in my opinion, then is limited. So, you may have to go back to your parking expert who pointed out the opportunity to park, in adjacent blocks. Those blocks really aren't practical. So from our perspective, then it becomes even that much more difficult for you, right?
Yeah.
Well, we still have block 18, 19, 25, 24, and 20.
Yeah, those are the adjacent
Those
ones
are
she was
the adjacent ones she was mentioning.
Right. And the reason I mentioned those is because they are within the Addison Hall circle, meaning you wouldn't have to go down Addison Hall circle and then all the way around the block, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were walking out towards Leslie Street. I don't know that people would do that, but that's not
No, they
for
would
me
We wouldn't
to
expect.
decide. Yeah. All right. So Prasanthi, thank you so much for bringing that up because that was on my list of things to do. Let me go back to David. And
Yes,
sorry.
so I wanted to emphasize that let's focus on the application in front of us. That's number one. Number two is with the application in front of us has got data which was used, which is specific. And we have it in the staff's report, which says that parking study basically was assessed on the anticipated maximum capacity of 250 people for the proposed building. That's a fact, that's a data we have, and that's the one we should focus on. And we need to review and approve based on what we have here. The parking will be given the 129. Of course, the condition says 123, but it would have been better to say 123 standard parking spaces, but that's okay. It's 129. That's what the information we have. That's the data we have. So when we are doing the condition which Steve is mentioning, I agree with that. Because as you already said before, we don't even have a site plan. There's no site plan application in front of the town. They don't have anything, nothing, no technical details. It's information we have now. And we have to work on this information and base our decision on this information. Because the information is something which we has got a sort of preliminary. That's where I propose those conditions. That's why Steve is proposing this condition to make sure that the town staff and the client and the applicant, they can later on discuss and resolve this amicably without having problems. So we have the information here in front of us. The maximum population, 250 people. And that's what we discuss and we make a decision. If later on they decide, as Rosanna said, to change, they can come again with another minor variance, another application. But now let's focus on what we have now. You know, that's what we have now. Let's focus, let's make a decision.
Okay, thank you, David. Linda.
Hi there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been sitting back listening to everything, and I think you gentlemen have covered it really, really well. Every time I had a question, it was covered. But I have to agree with what you're saying. I have to agree with what Steve is saying. Actually, too, David, too. I mean, I didn't like the whole share thing, for one thing. I don't know how you can assume sharing parking spots with another building that they don't even give you who they are yet. I don't know how that can even come into the question here at all. So to me, it's based on the facts. Once again, what David just said too, based on the 129. I think that's what, if we're making a decision, it has to be made on what they've given us there in front of us. To be able to take away 54 parking spots, that's a lot of parking spots, you know, overall, and not to have included any staff in those numbers. That's that. Lots of staff have one car per person. They're not coming as a family, and they're not coming in twos. And the transportation there for buses and stuff, it's not great. I mean, they're probably very spaced apart and everything else like that. And a lot of your staff aren't going to be using Uber and Lyft. That's for your guests. I get it. And I get it for the valet service. I think is probably the best thing to use but we can't really talk about something you don't have, right? You don't have anything in writing from these people. I guess that was why I didn't want that condition put into anything, because it's not there. The trees that you put in there, just to say, they're really nice in your CAD program there. They're great, but those are pretty mature trees you got going there. So what I think you're going to have very small little trees, unless you buy a lot of very mature trees. That's going to be extremely expensive too, right?
Yeah, florist, decorator right there. Yes. Ravid.
Yeah, we plan on buying them pretty tall, at around 15 feet to start.
All right, yeah, and then when they grow, obviously they're going to take up space and.
They're expensive, but we want people who are, especially our first clients, to have the best impression, because that's going to be how we build our business over time. So. Yeah,
understood. I think the trees are great. Anything that's got the greenery, you know, and you might have to, I was looking at your site, your plan there too. You have a big area that's all grassy. You might have to take some of that space for parking if need be. But then, like you said, you have pictures, but maybe you can fudge with that a little bit and get yourself another 10 spots out of that or something. I don't know, because it is only a concept plan. Once again, it's not law here, and you don't have your site plan, so it's a little bit different. I guess that's it. We pretty well covered everything else. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question for staff, if I may. Because it was brought up in the recommendations of the parking of the parking study. Rosanna, and you may not know the answer to this, so I'm just taking a shot in the dark, but it does talk about street parking. Do you know if the town is looking at on-street parking for that area?
At this time, I don't have that answer. I don't.
Yeah.
I know there's restrictions on parking at certain times, but I don't have the answer for that.
Yeah, because I think that was one of the things that was brought up in the parking study, that there was a potential for on-street parking. And if we don't know that, then there's no point in even discussing it.
I'd like to just, through the chair, I'd like to add, you know, these road widths are made for the fire trucks. They're made for snow removal, garbage, you know, I think there might be private for this area, but, you know, just speaking openly, the road width, I don't see anything in the subdivision agreement with respect to that at this point. It doesn't mean that that could change in the future, but at this point in time, we don't, there's nothing for Addison Hall. It's still being built. It's still under, you know, at this time.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. I noted that First Commerce is 30 meters, and then I believe it drops down to 20 meters, or, you know, approximately 60 feet road wide. That would typically somewhere between, and David, you probably have this better off the top of your head than I, but probably 20, maybe
So
road width, yeah, anywhere from what?
yeah, so through the chair. So what you're quoting there is a right of way, which includes boulevards on both sides. But you're talking about travel portion of the road. Okay. If you look at the other industrial areas within Aurora, and this is what you will have there. I don't really expect, I'm sorry to say this, but I'll just say from my knowledge of the town on the road transportation and so on, was one of my areas. And there will be, you see 2 lanes. Okay, one going the other way, the other one going the other way. And unless really there's a special case whereby they make the drive portion of the lane to be wider to accommodate on-site parking, a special one. At this point, we don't know anything.
Right.
We don't know anything. So I would say, while the client is mentioning about possibility of on-site parking, shared parking, yes, those they can happen, or their wishes. But the way I look at it, there's no site plan. Those they shouldn't play any part in our decision now. The decision, what information we know concretely, is there are 129 parking spaces, and we have 250 people who be in this proposed building. This specific proposed building, they've given us the data that it is 250 people. So whether it's valet parking, coming in a bus, they will be fixed to this number of people, 250 that have to fit in there. They can, you know what I mean? There is the number of people who have to fit in there.
And you're right, David. I mean, the only reason I bring it up was because it was part of the parking study that was done. And so we don't have the answer to that. Sorry, Stephen, yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just responding or a comment to David's point, the 129 is only deemed sufficient because it's supported by a parking study, which is making an assumption that there is shared parking and there is street parking. So if we're to say that we can't, it's too early to take at face value, like what we're saying is that those units are sold, or what I'm hearing is people are doubting whether the shared parking, like there needs to be some sort of agreement with an adjacent site where we don't know who the owner is. We don't know if they'll allow that. We don't know what their usage is going to be. And the parking study is only saying that 129 is acceptable for 250. based on the fact that the assumption that there is going to be shared parking and the potential for street parking. So I'm okay with it myself. I'll take the parking study at face value and I'll make that assumption. But I just make the point, David, that if you're saying we can't take that as a fact, then we can't, I don't know how somebody would get to 129 being okay for 250, because that's what the parking study, those are the underlying assumptions of the parking study. But I am not going to question the parking study. They're the experts, but I just make that point. So, yeah.
You can, if I maybe I could just through the chair, if you don't mind, if I'll just explain. So what I'm trying to say here is, even if you look at the report, they're using words anticipated peaking, operating hours, potential for shared parking. You know what I mean? Because they don't have the numbers. There's no design of the seats. There's no, at the moment, an agreement, because I'll give example. There have been in past whereby we know they will be shared the parking, and we see, and the town have seen it, that there's an agreement, and they've shown us that they're going to share. The other owner agrees, there's mutual sharing. Here we don't have, these are all potential. If what I'm trying to say, that's what I'm trying to say here, that the concrete number we have is 129. The other ones are just potential, which may happen, may not happen. And we don't know, maybe to be only 1 or 2 or 3, we don't even know. That's the point I was trying to say. Yep. So I agree with you, Steve.
So let me go to the applicant. I can see our committee in principle seems to like the idea of the banquet hall. I can see that the committee, and I also agree with David, there are a couple of conditions that I would like to see in here that encourage you to work with staff on the location of the building. That we encourage you to look at opportunities of parking arrangements with neighboring either tenants or owners. And there may be other conditions with recommendations attached to it. I think we're really uncomfortable going any higher than 250 maximum occupancy. It's up to you, and we haven't put it to a vote, so I'm not speaking for anybody here. But if your comfort level right now requires a variance approval in order for you to move forward, then we can do that, but you're going to get capped. You can always come back at a later date. No guarantees to increase the capacity, but there would be a capacity card limiting you to 250 if you were to go ahead and if we were to approve. There is a delay, of course, in deferring and how quickly you can react to what our comments have been so far. And I'm not sure what your timing is and how that plays out. That's that's something that you have to weigh out here. And but that's where you stand. So if you would like us to continue, let me know.
I mean, can we have a few minutes to discuss? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If you want to, mute your mic.
Yeah. And we'll stop the video for a couple of minutes.
And you can just go blank screen.
Okay.
We will be right here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And while they're thinking about it, perhaps what I would suggest to the committee is that if they do come back and suggest that we go ahead and come to a decision on this, what conditions that you would like to add to any approval here. And I'll just say this to Rosanna, don't worry about capacity limits. It can be enforced. So I know from a planning perspective, from where you're sitting, that's very difficult to enforce. But it wouldn't be the planning department's responsibility to do that.
Through the chair, actually, it is a little difficult. So let's just think ahead here. If we do put in that condition for 250 cap of people, and they do come in with their site plan, all is good. When they go to the zoning department to sign off and get their building permit, the zoning department won't be able to count 250 people on a site plan to release it. They're going to sign off based on 123 parking spaces, because that's what if the committee approves it tonight. They're only going to be looking at that component. So that's why I strongly discourage putting a cap of 250 people, because it's like you mentioned, the chair, churches and certain places have like auditorium where the space, and that's how parking is calculated based on occupancy. For banquet hall, it's not based on occupancy. So if a condition like this is imposed on this site, the fire department is not counting 250 people. They're counting based on fire code. They're not going to be looking at the Committee of Adjustments decision. They're going to be looking at, their protocol. The town bylaw officers can go out, but they're not counting 250 people. Like, I'm just talking openly. So I would strongly discourage a cap, but I just want to put that out there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think here's where I'm at this, and here's the problem that I see, Rosanna. I don't know if I right now what they have proposed, what they have is they have a building of 18,000 square feet that would potentially could be turned into a banquet hall when it goes to building code of 800 or 900 people. That's going to be too few parking spots for that. But what they're saying is they've got a site plan or a concept drawing that says we're only going to use 4,800 for a banquet facility, and the rest will be front house, and we're never going to have more than 250. And that's what the parking study looked at and said, if you have 250, then we're okay with 129. And if I look at the staff report, it references the parking study and says, if you got 250, then we're okay with it. So if you're saying that it's unenforceable, then I have to reject this application, right? And now I do tend to agree with Tom. I don't expect bylaw to be visiting this site every once in a blue moon. But if we find cars all over the street and people complaining, I fully expect bylaw to go in there. And if they do go and, do it, like have a political convention of 500 people and they're all over the place and they're disrupting Addison Park Circle, the owner's probably going to complain. Their adjacent parking spots or owners are going to complain, and bylaw will be in there and they will be able to enforce it, right? That's where I'm coming from. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not looking for a constant enforcement, but I think we need a mechanism to say, if we approve this and then they come back and they say, instead of 400 square feet, we're going to use 10,000 for the banquet facility, and we're going to start putting 700 people, and then that mess is going to come back on the Committee of Adjustment to say, how'd you approve this with no conditions, right? That's my concern there.
And
just
sorry.
Hold on, I just need to clarify something with Shantae. Shantae, can you come on, please, for a second?
Meeting.
Hi, guys.
Hi,
Hi,
we're
guys.
back.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So we were
Through
just sorry, somebody had something to say.
Sorry, through the chair. Were you referring to me or Prashanti?
No, I was looking. Sorry, I was looking for Shantae.
Prashanti?
Yes, please, Shantae.
Okay.
Oh, she's there. No, she's gone now. Procedurally,
are you looking for like me, Prashanti, or Ishita?
I'm sorry, Ishita. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Fine.
Yeah, go on. So I just threw you to the chair. I just wanted to clarify. Go on, sir. You had a question? Go on,
Yeah,
Tom.
Sorry, no, procedurally, I just want to make sure that we were okay while the applicant was taking a little bit of a break there. I just want to make sure that we were okay. We're talking about parking and capacity without the applicant being in the room. I'm assuming that procedurally we're okay to do that.
Just through you to you, I just want to clarify that just procedurally, no, it's fine. The applicant is in the meeting, so it's fine. But I just wanted to let the committee members know that it's the committee's decision at the end of the day to make a decision to approve the application, to deny the application, or to defer the application on the merits of what's being presented in front of you. So it's not necessary to have an initiation from the applicant in order to defer or anything, but it is the committee's decision at the end of the day. So the committee can make those 3 decisions based on what is being presented. So that's the motion that you would be making, one of the 3 motions.
Correct. And okay, I just wanted to make sure that off camera, if the applicant was off camera, that we were okay to continue our little discussion as well, and we're fine with that. And yes, it is also up to us should we wish to defer it. That is an option, but I'd like to hear from the applicant what your thoughts are. So please go ahead.
We actually wanted to have Casey from who did our transportation study say a few things, because she does have some comments regarding the maximum capacity.
Okay.
Casey, are you there? Can we unmute her, please?
Casey's gonna have to press *6 as they've joined through the phone, so they're muted. But if they press *6 on their phone, they can unmute themselves.
Casey, are you able to do that?
Is she on YouTube?
She's actually.
She's on the phone. No, she's
on her
phone.
She's on her phone. Yeah.
Can you call her or ask her to start? What is it? *6, Sheeta?
That is correct.
Sorry about that.
She's on her way to Montreal, so she's on the phone with us.
Hi, Casey. If you wanna talk, you can just unmute by pressing *6. I did. Oh, you did. Okay.
Do you want to maybe put her? Do you want to put her on speaker? And
maybe I can put her on speaker.
Let's do it that way.
Okay, we are hearing.
On speaker. Casey? I think she hung up on me.
Oh. Sorry, one sec.
It's okay.
Try that again.
You have reached the voicemail.
Okay.
She's probably trying to.
She's probably trying to get.
All right. We've run into these situations in the past, so we're totally comfortable with dealing with it. That's not a problem. Yes, David.
Okay, I'm just going to put you on speaker, and then you can talk to them through our phone. Okay, if that makes it easier. Okay.
Just 1 second, David. You're talking, but your mic is now muted.
Hold on, Casey. There's one person.
Sorry about that. I was saying while we're waiting for the other person to speak, I just wanted to raise up few things here to be special to the applicant and also to the committee, to everybody to understand. The 123 standard parking, which they want to provide, and even the zoning is based on the area of property. It's based on the area. Okay. Now, if you look at it, that's parking spaces. Now, the parking spaces, let's say 1 parking space, 1 car, you can have 4 people coming in that car. And if you have 4 people coming in that car, you multiply by, let's say, 123, it comes to 490 something number of people. And that contradicts with the maximum capacity of the building. Okay, so I just want people to understand what the zoning looks at the area, and then you look at the parking spaces. Okay, and what I'm seeing is the confusing part is what the client or the applicant has brought in, looking at the 250 people, which are maximum in that particular building. You follow what I'm saying? It means is, again, if you are talking about 250 people and you have got 4 people in each car, you can do the multiplication there. It is 250 divided by 4 people. It means even fewer parking spaces. I want you to understand the logic, and this is not the same. Okay, they're not the same, but they're related, but not the same. So if you're talking about 4 people coming in one car, 250 divided by 4, you're talking about 4 into 25 is what? Is
about 62, 63 spots.
Yeah, so you're talking about 62 or 63 parking spaces, which basically have extra spaces in this location.
Okay, so you're right in principle, but in practice, then the building code kicks in and says that you can only have so many people in so many square feet. So
in a building, yes.
Yeah, so you know, there's different capacities based on different things. We're doing based on the information that we've got, and it's based on the 250. So yeah.
So just putting that out so that people see how this can change answers based on what you look at.
Okay. So do we have the
we have Casey on the line. Casey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Casey, and I wrote the parking study for this project. So basically, I worked on this with Michael Batt, the technical staff at the town of Aurora. So basically, everything is done to the town standard, and I sent him my scope of work, and he confirmed all of my steps. So basically, he confirms and is concur with the study methodology and the results of the parking study. So basically, one of the arguments in the parking study is the first principles calculation, which is adopted from the city of Vaughan parking standards, zoning bylaw standards. They have a pretty comprehensive section in their standards that specifically talks about parking for banquet hall, this type of facility. So basically, the parking demand is a factor of maximum people capacity and as well as gross floor area. So, and also auto occupancy, which means how many people are in car, and also the transit modes, how much is the transit available in the area. So there is a formula you can use. So we use this formula, and in the end, and also there's a factor of, it's called, if you look at table 2, the first principles calculation of parking demand, there is the simultaneous occupation and also sequential occupation. Basically means if you use the 2 rooms simultaneously, obviously the demand is higher, but if you use the 2 rooms sequentially, then the demand is lower. So basically, in our case, all you need is 71 spaces for the 250 people and this gross floor area. And we have 129 spaces. So, hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
yes, they
Yeah.
hear you.
So, because it's so quiet, there's no response. So basically, everything else, the shared parking opportunities, the on-street parking, everything else is just general contents of a parking study. I put everything in to let you know these are the options that you have, even after everything else fails, which it would not. But these are the options that you have if you need more than 129 spaces. But based on my calculations, and your staff concurs with me that you don't need more than 129 spaces for this 250 people capacity. So actually, if you do a quick calculation, probably 350 people will be able to fit there as well. So it's not like I know you're concerned about, having overflow of parking spaces, but I can assure you it is in the owner's best interest to manage their parking issues so that it does not draw attention to have parking enforcer officers on site. And there are many ways you can have parking management done on site to make sure that you don't have more than 129 vehicles, a lot more than 129 vehicles to be on site for each venue.
So we don't anticipate, I'm looking at your comments, and yeah, I'm looking at the simultaneous occupation and the sequential occupation numbers based on the auto mode split 95 versus 100. And I'm very familiar with Vaughan because I was on the hospital project there, and I can assure you I'm familiar with this stuff too. And I should tell you that I know Dan real well as well at Schaefer and company. So I know that the information that you're providing here is accurate. I certainly have no reason to doubt that. However, looking at the application, which is tied to a capacity of 250, I don't know that we can do any better than that based on the information that we've got. My suggestion to the applicant was if they wanted to look at higher capacities that they bring, information forward in order to support that. And Casey, I think that's where we're at right now.
Right. Yes, I was listening to your. I pulled over and I've been listening for 2 hours. Yes, so I understand what you come from. I guess it's up to the clients. Personally, from the parking perspective, 250 people, no problem. It can be supported by 129 spaces. So in my opinion, more people can be accommodated on site. So it's up to the client if they want to keep the 250 or go for more. I don't know. It's up.
I think that seems that where we're at,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you, Casey. I appreciate it. Is
Casey,
there anything else you guys want to add, Casey?
Please be safe, Casey.
Yes.
So I can sign off now?
Yes.
Yes.
Please,
Thank you,
please.
Casey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so I guess
Yeah,
we're at the
I'm very familiar with these parking studies, by the way, and I know these people. I know them well. I've worked with Dan on a number of projects, and I know his thoroughness and what have you. So I understand we're looking at some data that makes sense. But the call is yours. At this point, the committee can also.
If we were to, cards on the table, we are still in the purchasing agreement phase of the land, and it's contingent on us having your support to move forward with this sort of site plan and with the amount of parking and the building and everything else. So we kind of need to, I guess, figure out where we go from here, because we cannot close on it without knowing that we have the city support on that, and that we can do what we need to do with the GFA and with the parking spaces and all of that. So, time is really not on our side on this. And, I know that we're already a month behind because we were actually supposed to do this last month. And so, we're sort of on a bit of a time crunch on whether we are going to invest any more money and time into this. And, we have a hard closing date now. So we need to figure out, I guess, if that's, where we stand on that,
So I think that's so it's up to us. So I think it makes sense for us. We're gonna move forward. If they're okay with this, we'll move forward with the 250. If we see later on that we I don't think we're going
If
to.
we
but
if we do at some point not change the building, because I really don't foresee us
Yeah.
changing the capacity of the guest count, but you are absolutely right in that we really didn't calculate the number of staff that could potentially be on site as well. And so, having said that, if we were to come back for an MV at a later point to say, okay, we would like to add the staff into the number, not increase the number of guests, because again, we don't foresee the building sizes changing very much, if at all, and it certainly won't change the capacity amount of guests. But you are accurate in the staffing count, and if we do come back with an MV for that, where would we stand on that? Is sort of and how long would that take, and so forth. So
Okay. So I'll just go to staff. You know how long it's taken you in order to get to the Committee of Adjustment today?
Yeah.
All right. I would say that timing is roughly the same.
Right.
Okay. So Rosanna, do you want to comment?
Timing on with respect to if this application is approved tonight and then final and binding, like that process, or site plan?
No, what would happen if they were to come back? So we approve this, let's say, with a capacity of 250. They go through the next phase because now they've got some assurances they can go and, do their due diligence, move forward, get to a site plan and get that moving, and then come back to the Committee of Adjustment for an increase in capacity based on whatever, for another minor variance.
That's a tough question. The reason why I say that is because we have urban design guidelines, we have engineering review, fire review. There's a number of reviews that happen. Typically, a site plan application can take 6 months to a year to get approved, from right beginning to the end. If somewhere in between that review, we realize, or the applicant realizes, hey, we need more GFA, or the occupancy is changing, there will be a point within that site plan process where they will apply for a minor variance again. It's like, it's a 2-month process from the day one, the day you submit, to the final and binding. So it's hard for me to put an exact timing, but through the site plan process, there will be a point where you get down to the final numbers, the final review, and that'll be the point where their town or applicant will realize, okay, you're going to need a variance. It's not going to work. So I don't really have a good answer through the chair, but
that works. Rosanna, thank you for that, because so at any point during the site plan process, if you've got enough information at that point, you can resubmit while that is all taking place. And she's, Rosanna's correct. If you get to site plan, you could be looking at, 6 months or more before that gets approved. So, eyes wide open on that process too.
Right.
Yeah, we know. But in the rest of it, we can sort of go through the general process. It's the parking and the zoning that was our biggest issue. And if in theory we can get approved for those things, then we can at least say, all right, well, we're moving forward. Now it's about working with the city and the staff to make adjustments of what we need,
Okay.
do that.
So I think we agree and are comfortable with the 250 person capacity, as long as we have the opportunity to reapply for a minor variance later down the road if needed.
Yeah.
You always have that.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
And in hearing what, I know you can't give me an answer without hearing this, but if you could give me a smile or a nod of some sort.
We're going to vote on it.
If you can look at the faces of the members of the committee, that's your answer.
Okay. Got it.
All right.
And David,
that's the best I can give you.
All
right. So what I'd like to do then, because the committee also has an opportunity, we can approve this, we can defer it, and we can well, we can refuse it as well. I don't think that's the direction that we're going here. But let's look at a motion. I'd like to look at a motion on the application, and I'll invite any member of the committee, if they want to put in a condition, that you request that it be friendly to the person making the motion, and then it would be up to the person making the motion to agree to friendly amendments if that's the way we want to go. So, Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Through the chair, I move that we approve minor variance MV 2021-25 as outlined in the report, however, with 3 amended conditions of approval. The first being that the approval be contingent on a facility maximum capacity of 250 people total. 2, that item B, which is section 5.4 of the zoning bylaw requiring 183 parking spaces, be contingent on a safe pedestrian consideration, such as a sidewalk be made available between the street and the final facility. And 3, that the COA recommends that the applicant work with the town of Aurora to review the site plan, building location, parking configuration, and other parking considerations.
Okay, so do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Steve. I saw your hand up first there, Steve. Discussion on the motion. Are there any other conditions that we would like to add? And it'll be conditional to acceptance by the mover of the motion. David, go ahead, please.
Just see, I'm not sure whether it could be a condition or recommendation, which would read that the applicant acknowledges that due to condition, I think condition number 2, dealing with the parking configuration, that there could be potential trigger the need for future variances. Okay, so that it's there and they know and they don't get surprised. It could be something like acknowledges or knows that with these conditions put forward, there's a potential to trigger new future variances if they affect the number of proposed parking or configuration of parking or parking configuration.
Okay, I think I understand what you're asking to be added, David. So it relates to the potential for a future variance for parking. Am I correct?
Related to parking configuration.
Okay, parking configuration. Okay. Yep.
Yes, because as you remember,
okay,
based on the Daniel's condition, which I agree with, that they have to discuss. They will be talking to the town at site plan stage on the parking configuration, and that parking configuration may trigger. There's a potential to trigger the need of future variances.
Okay, so it's an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Daniel, are you amenable to that addition to your motion?
Yes, through the chair. Should I rephrase with the amendment as a single motion, which is an addition to my condition number 3? Or what is the procedure in terms of?
So procedurally, what happens here is you would agree to this at this point. Okay, but I want to make sure that there aren't any other conditions that might be added to that in addition to it, so that we'll circle back and cover all of them unless there are none others. Linda, are you okay with the conditions as proposed? And did you want to add anything else?
No, I don't want to add anything else. I do think that the condition that David just said too, with, being aware of a possible variance coming up, if you decide to make any changes at all to what we've agreed to tonight, if we agree to that, you will have to go back to committee again,
Sure.
I think that's really the bottom line to that. Any changes you're making to what Daniel's about to say with the motion, you'll have to come back. Be prepared to come back.
Okay. Stephen, are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm fine with the motion as submitted and amended.
And I'm not going to make any additions. I'm not going to suggest any. You've covered it to my satisfaction as well. Yeah. So, Daniel, do you want to just, for the record, go through those, your three plus the addition suggested by David?
Sorry, through the chair, I just wanted to say that I do agree with David's note to acknowledge the condition that the applicants are aware that they may need to come back, but I think that is a given. Like when the applicant does make a site plan application, staff will not let the application progress should there be any zoning deficiencies. So that is something that will be flagged, and then we will let the applicants know. And if the applicants, at that point, they have two options: either they comply or they proceed to the committee of adjustment.
To the committee, yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up, and so it's just not something that we will kind of look the other way on. So I just don't know if it's worth adding that as a condition, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I was going to say through the site plan application, if things need to come back, they'll come back.
And they will, exactly.
Yeah, or conversely, they'll comply. So
exactly.
Yeah. So David, it's like a condition, but more of a recommendation, but it would be covered in the site plan anyway.
Yeah. So you can include it. You can leave it. No problem. As Shantae said, they'll come back anyways. But right. Just bear suspenders, just to encourage them. To encourage them.
So I think we can actually safely, David, leave it out. But I think that the other conditions definitely need to be there in order for us to vote on the motion.
Yeah.
Yes, and through the chair, I just want to add one more thing, is that the discussion relating to the acknowledgement of any potential variances will be included on record in the minutes.
Right.
So, and this visual and this recording will be a record as well, and the minutes will be a record as well. Yeah, just something to consider.
Thank you for pointing that out, Shantae. And I'm assuming as you're very astute at picking up in the minutes some of the discussion that goes into the official minutes would include a number of the points that have been raised in the discussion as brought by members of the committee and the applicant. So yeah, I think we'll more than cover it there. So we have the motion including three conditions which have been outlined in the motion by David. I'll call the question. All of those in favor of the motion? Well, that carried unanimously. So you must be feeling a sigh of relief over there.
Thank you so much. And just to clarify, it's on both of the minor variances. We have the banquet hall rezoning and the parking.
That is correct. Yeah.
Amazing.
So you have both. And I think you've got a little bit of work ahead of you. Mm-hmm. I hope that this discussion has been helpful. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's probably raised a few issues going forward, but I am confident that you are more than capable of tackling those. So congratulations on a job very well done. I appreciate the time and the energy I'll thank members of the committee on this particular application as well, because the discussion has been very fruitful.
Thank you so
Thank-
much
thank
for
you to
your
everyone
time. Thank
for-
you.
for all your time
We
as
really
well.
appreciate
Thank you.
this. And just to clarify, I'm assuming Brashante, we will get a record of all this. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll bid you a very good evening or balance of it.
So much. Thank you
very much.
again.
Thank you.
We greatly appreciate
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah,
Good luck.
actually, at our venue.
Thank you very
Come
much.
for your open house.
Definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you
All right.
so
Can't
much.
wait.
Have
Have
a
a good evening.
bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5 on our agenda, new business. Is there any new business?
I think it's old by now. Through you, Mr.
I just
Chairman.
have one thing while we are on, I guess, the record and on tape here or video. I'm going to ask just new business probably didn't have to come up, but I'm just going to put it out there. Next meeting of the Committee of Adjustment, can I ask Danielle as Vice Chair, can you chair the next meeting, or would you be willing to chair the next meeting? Okay.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chair.
I'll just say please, because in all likelihood, I will be here. There is a extremely slim chance that I won't, but I'd rather be prepared. And even if I am here, if you don't mind chairing the meeting, I will take a back seat.
Wow.
Sounds good.
Okay.
On the hot seat. The hot seat.
All right. That was the only thing I wanted to actually bring up. So I will look to the committee for a motion to adjourn. David, thank you. All in favor of adjourning?